It has been a devastating few weeks for the left. The socialists and the neolibs are in full-blown panic today. And we have several weeks to go before the red avalanche buries their desperate and misguided socialist policies in America, hopefully forever. The losses for the left at the Supreme Court have been nothing short of monumental this term. The conservative court, the first conservative court, by the way, since the Great Depression, with 1/3 of its members chosen by a one-term bombastic president they have tried to destroy and discredit for years, but who is living rent-free in their heads even today, 18 months after leaving office, because of the legacy he left behind. Donald Trump, the most consequential president since at least FDR, and certainly the grand champion for being the most consequential president ever in American history when it comes to the Supreme Court. And what eats up the left the most? Trump to be back in office in a couple of years drives them nuts. Yesterday came the crowning achievement of this Supreme Court term when the court sent the EPA the idea of the Chevron doctrine and the overreaching, ominous presence of the regulatory agencies packing, when it ruled by a clear majority 6-3 that the EPA had no authority and no right to dictate to the state of West Virginia, or any other state for that matter, how to manage emissions from power plants. This ruling will echo through the alphabet agencies for a generation, maybe a lot longer, and stops dead in its tracks the reckless, misguided left-wing agenda, and most notably, the Green New Deal and Joe Biden's war on American energy. More cases will now come, of course, but the court has set the stage to jettison the Chevron doctrine forever, sometime in the near future, and maybe even in the next term. But this was just one pivotal and consequential case. Two more strengthened religious liberty and protections. Another solidified an individual's right to keep and bear arms outside of the home by knocking down a 100-year-old New York law as unconstitutional that demanded people had to show good reason to carry concealed. And of course, 1 week ago today, the court dealt a death blow to the 1973 decision Roe v. Wade, sending that issue of abortion back to the states to decide. It has been a truly remarkable term for the Supreme Court, and the next term shaping up much the same. The only disappointment came when the court, with Chief Justice John Roberts and Associate Justice Brett Kavanaugh joining the three liberals in shutting down the Remain in Mexico policy for asylum seekers. Now, I don't agree with that decision. I don't. I think it was the wrong decision, but you know what I didn't do? I didn't go out and riot in the streets overnight. I didn't burn public buildings down or try to shoot police officers. I don't plan to travel to Washington anytime soon and try to kill Supreme Court justices or attack the court itself. No, I didn't do those things. Instead, I plan to work harder to find ways to close the border that will stand up to judicial scrutiny, elect conservative members to Congress and the Senate. Now that I've covered all of that, let's dive a little deeper into several things, including the fallout from some of those cases and reflecting on how well the left is taking it all. Spoiler alert, they're not taking it very well at all. But I'm guessing you probably knew that. So let's start with everyone's favorite geriatric president, Joe Biden, and his trip to Europe. The American left, for some reason, has this odd obsession, always looking to the Europeans for acceptance. I don't get it. It's like they look at the smug European attitude toward America and say, hey, I hate America too. Let's be friends. Want to get together? You know, because despite everything the good old US of A has done for the Europeans forever, they still don't like us. They still think they're better than we are. Even though we have quite literally saved their fannies and financed their lifestyles, we defend them. We enable them to have cheap medicine and everything else. And in doing so, allowed them to set up their gigantic nanny state, and still somehow it's put them on the verge of bankruptcy because, well, they're financially illiterate, frankly. And it's dragging us down, too, make no mistake. But the president, as you know, was over there for the G7, and he was asked about recent polling that shows a huge majority in America think the country is going in the wrong direction. That number, by the way, 85%. And he basically said, no, it's not. Americans just think that because the Supreme Court, it's terrible. It's their fault. Watch.
They do not think that. You haven't found one person, one world leader to say America's going backwards. America's better positioned to lead the world than we ever have been. We have the strongest economy in the world. Our inflation rates are lower than other nations in the world. The one thing that has been destabilizing is the outrageous behavior of the Supreme Court of the United States on overruling not only Roe v. Wade, but essentially challenging the right to privacy. We've been a leader in the world in terms of personal rights and privacy rights. And it is a mistake, in my view, for the Supreme Court to do what it did. I can understand why the American people are frustrated because of what the Supreme Court did. I can understand why the American people are frustrated because of inflation. But inflation is higher in almost every other country. Prices in the pump are higher in almost every other country. We're better positioned to deal with this than anyone.
So pretty much everything that just came out of the president's mouth was false. I've already run down a long list right here on this program over the last couple of weeks of all the countries with far better inflation rates than we have. And it's quite a lot. And pretty much every other developed nation in the world has a lower inflation rate than the United States. We're at 8.6%. Every single one has a better rate than we do, pretty much. And by the way, here's what the president said about high gas prices. This should make you feel pretty good. Listen to this nonsense.
The war has pushed prices up. They could go as high as $200 a barrel, some analysts think. How long is it fair to expect American drivers and drivers around the world to pay that premium for this war?
As long as it takes. So Russia cannot, in fact, defeat Ukraine and move beyond Ukraine.
Prices will be high for as long as it takes. So quit your complaining. Gas prices aren't only high because of the war in Ukraine. They were going up long before that ever happened. But it's affecting prices everywhere, mostly diesel fuel. And the only thing that's going on with Joe Biden is that he's doing nothing about it here. He says, I'm doing everything I can. Joe Biden refuses to allow drilling for more oil here in America by American energy companies. You see, the president cares far more about Ukraine and its people and its borders as an aside than he does about you. Let that sink in. He cares more about Ukrainian citizens than he does about you. And he's sticking with this reasoning. You have to hear it.
Ultimately, the reason why gas prices are up is because of Russia. Russia. The reason why the food crisis exists is because of Russia. Russia not allowing grain to get out of Ukraine.
Marsha. Really, Joe? That's what you're going with? Russia. I mean, he sounds like that. He refuses to take any responsibility for anything ever. It's like you're dealing with a child. But maybe in many ways we are. Anyhow, back to Roe v. Wade and abortion, because apparently the president thinks that's why his polling is so miserable, too. It's not anything he did. It never is, of course. It's that dirty Supreme Court. Those rotten justices. I can't believe they ruled they read the stuff and they made a ruling and stuff. He has an answer for that, too. Of course. Here it is.
The most important thing to be clear about is we have to change. I believe we have to codify Roe v. Wade in the law. And the way to do that is to make sure the Congress votes to do that. And if the filibuster gets in the way, it's like voting rights. It should be, we provide an exception for this, require an exception to the filibuster for this action to deal with the Supreme Court decision.
Easy, Joey. We'll get you through this. We'll get you off the stage, Jill. That nice dose of whatever it is you take. He just wants to blow up democratic norms completely. That's all.